All right, here we are again today with another group of items from an estate auction. This group came from an estate in Kansas, and this gentleman, these few items here, he had been drafted into the Army in 1963, and in May of 64 he was sent to Vietnam, where he stayed until May of 65. Now, back in 1964 there really weren't that many troops in Vietnam. And most troops, if they were not involved with aviation, were still more of an advisor capacity. By the end of 64, there was about 23,000 U.S. personnel in Vietnam. By the end of 65, there were over 180. So when he arrived in May of 64, really not that many troops were in Vietnam. First thing to look at here is there were two jungle shirts, jungle jackets in the lot. And we see that this one here would be considered one of the first pattern with the exposed buttons. Now they did away with the exposed buttons when they did the second pattern, which I believe started in late 64 into 65. They covered up these buttons because they were snagging a lot on the brush. And probably the most interesting thing about the shirt is this pocket patch here for the 18th. It says 18th AOD. I believe that was the 18th Aviation Operations Detachment, and they coordinated the airfield at, I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it, but Suc Treng. It was in very far south Vietnam, and I believe they came over from Okinawa. Some places online said it was late in 61, some said late in 62, but by 65 the 18th AOD became the 125th. So only really existed for a few years. So he had a second. I said there were two first pattern shirts. Fortunately, this one did not have a pocket patch on it, and on both of them his name tape had been removed. I assume he just removed them to use them on another uniform, but you never know with these estate sales and auctions. Sometimes they'll just tear things off of there, and so just don't know. But fortunately, there was a duffel bag in another lot in the same auction that had his name stenciled on. But another feature of those first patterns, on the back we see the those size take-ups, and that was something that was only on like the first and second pattern. And both of these shirts, jackets, were from 1964. And so you had two pairs of pants to match, and we see they have that same kind of distinctive feature of the exposed buttons, and you can see how they would get caught on brush and limbs and things like that, so they're probably a little bit problematic. I said two pairs of them, they're both the same. And then this pair of boots, some people would classify this as the second pattern of the jungle boot, if you count the Okinawa Advisor boots as being the first pattern. But for me, I would consider this to be the first pattern. And on the first pattern, it had a couple of distinctive features, and one of them was this leather band, because when they made the second pattern of this boot, they did away with, they didn't have this as leather anymore. It was just like a nylon piece. And the same on the back of the boot. This leather stay running from the top down was replaced again with a piece of nylon material. And by the time they did the third pattern, they ended up putting ankle support running right across here. So if you see a pair of boots that doesn't have the ankle support, you'll know it's either a first or second pattern. And then if it has the leather at the top and the leather in the back, you say that's a first pattern, unless it's a reproduction. And there's one other feature. These vent here on the first pattern, see how they're kind of sticking out a little bit? By the time they did the second pattern, they were kind of embedded a little bit into the leather. And these ones, it's kind of hard to read it, but you can see 11-63, so November 1963. And they also, on the first and second pattern ones, they would put a tag sewn into the tongue and on there it just says that was from the 1964 contract. So always nice to find a group of items fairly early in the war, especially when you consider, like I said, there were only about 23,000 U.S. personnel by the end of 64. And when you think about in 68 and 69 being over 500,000 troops, and even by the end of 65 being 180,000, very few troops at the time when he got to Vietnam. So always interesting to find a good early group of items from somebody who was in Vietnam. Hope you've appreciated seeing all these items here. Give you a little information on them if you have. Hope you'll like and subscribe. And people are always asking me about items. What happens with some of these items? Some of them get sold, some of them get kept. If they're sold, be sure to check on Instagram I'll put the link down below. You can go there and see if any of these items that come up for sale, you may have a chance to buy them. As always, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.